The knock came at 3:17 a.m. David Harrison jolted awake, his heart already racing before his mind fully processed the sound. Another knock, louder, more urgent. He stumbled out of bed, fumbling for the lamp switch, his thoughts immediately going to Sarah. She should have been home hours ago from her nursing shift. He opened the door to find two police officers standing under his porch light, their faces grave. "Mr. Harrison? David Harrison?" "Yes," his voice cracked. "What's wrong? Is it Sarah?" The older officer, a woman with steel grey hair, spoke gently. "There's been an accident. Mr. Harrison, your wife was in a car collision on Route 9. She's alive, but she's in critical condition at Memorial Hospital. You need to come with us." The world tilted. David gripped the doorframe. "How bad?" "She's in a coma, sir. The doctors are doing everything they can." The hospital corridors were a blur of fluorescent lights and antiseptic smell. David's sneakers squeaked against the polished floors as he followed a nurse through the labyrinth of the ICU. His mind was static, white noise punctuated by terrible possibilities. They stopped outside a room with glass walls. Through the window, David could see her, Sarah. His wife of 6 years lay motionless in the hospital bed, her blonde hair matted against the pillow, a ventilator tube running into her mouth. Machines beeped steadily around her, heartbeat, oxygen levels, blood pressure. Her left arm was in a cast, bandages wrapped around her head. "Oh God," David whispered, pressing his palm against the glass. "Sarah!" Dr. Martinez, a tired-looking man in his 50s, approached from behind. "Mr. Harrison, I'm the attending physician. Your wife sustained severe head trauma in the accident. We've induced a medical coma to reduce brain swelling. The next 72 hours are critical." David couldn't look away from Sarah. "Will she wake up?" "We're hopeful, but I need to prepare you. There may be memory issues, cognitive changes. We won't know the extent until she regains consciousness." David nodded numbly, barely processing the words. He stepped toward the door. "I need to see her." "Of course." "But Mr. Harrison..." Dr. Martinez hesitated, exchanging a glance with the nurse. "There's something else you need to know." David turned. "What?" "Your wife wasn't alone in the car." The words hung in the air like smoke. "What do you mean?" Dr. Martinez gestured down the hallway. "There was an infant with her, a newborn, maybe 2 weeks old. The baby was in a car seat in the back, miraculously unharmed, just some minor bruising." David's legs went weak. "A baby? That's impossible." "Sarah isn't pregnant. We don't have a baby." The doctor's expression shifted to confusion. "Mr. Harrison, the baby was secured in a car seat. Your wife had hospital discharge papers in her purse. Newborn care instructions, formula diapers." "No." David shook his head violently. "No, you've made a mistake. Sarah would have told me if she was pregnant. We've been trying for years. She would have..." His voice broke off. They had been trying for 3 long, heartbreaking years of negative pregnancy tests, failed fertility treatments, and growing silence between them. "Where's the baby now?" David asked, his voice hollow. "Pediatric observation. Completely healthy. Social services is involved, but we need to establish guardianship." Dr. Martinez paused, his face grave. "Mr. Harrison, given the circumstances and the need to understand the full situation, we ran standard genetic screening from the samples we collected during emergency treatment." David's hands were shaking. "And?" Dr. Martinez's next words shattered everything. "The infant is not biologically related to you." David stood frozen in the hospital corridor, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry insects. Not his child, not his blood, but Sarah's. His mind reeled through possibilities, each one more devastating than the last. An affair, a secret pregnancy, a life hidden from him for 9 months. "I need to see the baby," David heard himself say. Dr. Martinez nodded and led him through another maze of corridors to the pediatric wing. They stopped outside the nursery observation window. Inside, a nurse cradled a tiny bundle wrapped in pink hospital blankets. "Her name, according to the discharge papers, is Emma," Dr. Martinez said quietly. David pressed closer to the glass. The baby was perfect, impossibly small, with wisps of dark hair and a scrunched-up face. She was sleeping peacefully, unaware of the chaos surrounding her existence. Not his daughter, but Sarah's. "Who's the father?" David asked, his voice raw. "We don't know. There's no father listed on the birth certificate, Mr. Harrison. I think you should sit down. There's more." They moved to a small consultation room with uncomfortable plastic chairs and outdated magazines scattered on a coffee table. Dr. Martinez closed the door. "The nurse who initially treated your wife." "Nurse Patterson," she recognized Sarah immediately. "She works in the maternity ward and remembered your wife from her nursing shifts here." "But Mr. Harrison," the doctor's face was troubled. "Sarah never gave birth at this hospital. We checked all records. There's no record of her pregnancy, no prenatal visits, no delivery." David's world narrowed to a single point. "Then where did the baby come from?" "That's what we're trying to understand. The discharge papers in her purse are from St. Catherine's Hospital in Newark, about 60 miles from here. We've contacted them. They confirmed a baby girl named Emma was born there 2 weeks ago and discharged into the care of a woman matching your wife's description." "Matching her description? Was it her or not?" "The mother who gave birth registered under a different name, Rebecca Collins. But the photo ID she provided was clearly forged. The hospital staff there is cooperating with the investigation." David's head was spinning. "Investigation? What are you saying?" Dr. Martinez chose his words carefully. "Mr. Harrison, we have to consider the possibility that this child was taken from St. Catherine's under false pretenses. We've contacted the police and social services. They're trying to locate the biological parents now." The word hung in the air like poison. "Taken." Over the next 48 hours, David lived in the hospital. He sat beside Sarah's bed, holding her limp hand, staring at her unconscious face and wondering who she really was. The woman he'd married, had he ever truly known her? He watched through the nursery window as baby Emma slept, cried, fed. Social services had placed her in temporary hospital care while they investigated. David found himself drawn to that window again and again, watching this tiny stranger who had somehow become the center of a mystery that was tearing his life apart. On the second night, Nurse Patterson, a kind woman in her 40s with compassionate eyes, found David in the waiting room, his head in his hands. "Mr. Harrison, I think you should know something." David looked up, exhausted. "What now?" She sat down beside him, her voice low. "I've worked with your wife for 3 years. Sarah was. She was struggling. After the last failed fertility treatment 6 months ago, she changed, became withdrawn, started taking extra shifts, volunteering for overnight duties. I thought she was just burying herself in work to cope." "Did she ever mention a pregnancy?" "No, never." Nurse Patterson hesitated. "But about a month ago, I saw her in the hospital chapel. She was crying. I asked if she was okay, and she said she'd made a terrible mistake, that she'd gone too far and didn't know how to undo it." David's blood ran cold. "Did she say what she meant?" "No. I assumed it was about fertility treatments, maybe considering something ethically questionable. Some couples in their desperation." She trailed off. "I never imagined it could be something like this." On the third morning, Detective Morrison arrived, a no-nonsense woman with sharp eyes and a recorder in her hand. She interviewed David in the hospital cafeteria over bad coffee and worse news. "We've located Emma's biological parents," she said. "A young couple in Newark. They reported their newborn daughter missing from the hospital nursery 2 weeks ago." David's stomach turned. "Missing? As in kidnapped?" "Abducted from the maternity ward while the mother was sleeping. The father had gone home to shower. Security footage showed a woman in scrubs, matching your wife's description, entering the room, taking the baby and leaving through a service exit." "No," David shook his head. "Sarah wouldn't. She's a nurse. She saves lives. She wouldn't steal a child." "Mr. Harrison, grief and desperation can make people do things they never thought possible." Detective Morrison's voice softened slightly. "We've seen cases like this before. Women suffering from infertility-related trauma, experiencing what's called pregnancy psychosis. or extreme psychological breaks. They become convinced the child is meant to be theirs. David thought about the empty bassinet they'd bought 3 years ago, still sitting in their spare bedroom. The baby clothes Sarah couldn't bring herself to donate, the painful silence that had grown between them like a wall. What happens now? Emma will be returned to her biological parents once we complete the legal process. Your wife, when she wakes up, will face criminal charges. Child abduction is a federal offense. She's in a coma, David said desperately. She might not even survive. And if she does, you said yourself there might be brain damage. How can you charge someone who... The courts will determine her competency for trial. Detective Morrison interrupted. Right now, my job is to reunite that baby with her real parents and ensure justice is served. That afternoon, David watched through the nursery window as a young couple was escorted in by hospital staff. The woman, maybe 25, with tear-stained cheeks, rushed to Emma's bassinet. She lifted the baby with trembling hands, pressed her face to the infant's head and sobbed. The man beside her, the father, wrapped his arms around both of them, his own face buried in his wife's shoulder, his body shaking with relief. David turned away, his heart breaking, not for himself, but for Sarah, for what she'd become in her desperation, for the family torn apart, for the baby who would never know the woman who'd held her for 2 stolen weeks. On the 5th day, Sarah's eyes opened. David was beside her bed when it happened. He'd been reading aloud from her favorite book, something the nurses said might help stimulate brain activity, when her fingers twitched in his hand. Sarah? Her eyelids fluttered, then opened. Confused blue eyes stared at the ceiling, then slowly found his face. David? Her voice was a rasp through her dry throat. I'm here. Tears streamed down his face. You're awake. You're going to be okay. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were a lie. Nothing would be okay again. Sarah's gaze drifted around the room, the machines, the IV lines, the hospital walls. What happened? You were in a car accident. You've been in a coma for 5 days. Her brow furrowed. I don't remember. Then her eyes went wide with panic. Emma, where's Emma? Is she okay? Please tell me she's okay. David's throat closed. The desperation in her voice, the maternal terror. It was real. Whatever had driven Sarah to take that child, in her mind, Emma was her daughter. Sarah, Emma is fine. She's safe. But, he gripped her hand tighter, we need to talk about where she came from. What do you mean? Sarah's eyes filled with tears. David, I know you're upset. I know I should have told you I was pregnant. I was scared. After everything we went through, I was afraid to hope, afraid it would fall apart again. But when I found out, when I realized I was finally going to be a mother... Sarah, stop. David's voice broke. You weren't pregnant. Emma isn't your biological daughter. The confusion on her face was absolute. What are you talking about? Of course she's mine. I gave birth to her. She stopped, her face going pale. I gave birth to her. Didn't I? No, honey. You didn't. Sarah's hand went to her stomach, feeling for something that wasn't there. Her face crumpled as the truth, whatever truth her fractured mind could grasp, began to dawn. I don't understand, she whispered. I remember being pregnant. I remember going to appointments. I remember holding her for the first time. How can that not be real? Dr. Martinez entered the room, having been alerted to Sarah's awakening. Mrs. Harrison, I need you to stay calm. You've been through significant trauma, and your memories may be confused right now. But Sarah wasn't listening. She was staring at her hands, at her flat stomach, at David's devastated face. What did I do? She whispered. David, what did I do? Over the following weeks, the full picture emerged through psychiatric evaluations, therapy sessions, and police interviews conducted in hospital rooms. Sarah had experienced what doctors called a psychotic break, triggered by years of infertility trauma. She had genuinely believed herself pregnant, a false pregnancy so psychologically powerful that she'd exhibited symptoms. Planned for a baby, prepared a nursery in secret at a storage unit David never knew about. When no baby came, her fractured psyche had found one. I remember seeing her in the hospital, Sarah told David during one of his visits, her voice hollow. "I was doing my rounds and I passed the maternity ward. There was this baby girl and her mother was asleep and I knew she was meant to be mine. I knew it with absolute certainty, like God had finally answered my prayers. So you took her," David said, not quite a question. "I don't remember taking her." Sarah's eyes were distant. "I remember holding my daughter. I remember bringing her home. I remember feeling complete for the first time in years. The rest is just fog." The psychiatric evaluations showed Sarah was suffering from severe postpartum psychosis despite never having been postpartum, combined with dissociative disorder. She had compartmentalized her actions so completely that even now, parts of her memory remained fractured. "Will she go to prison?" David asked Dr. Chen, Sarah's psychiatrist, during one of their consultations. "That's for the courts to decide. But given her mental state, it's more likely she'll be required to undergo intensive psychiatric treatment. She's not a danger to others. This was a highly specific delusion tied to her infertility trauma. With proper medication and therapy, she can recover." "And us?" David's voice was small. "Can we recover?" Dr. Chen looked at him with compassionate eyes. "That's a question only you can answer." Emma was returned to her biological parents, James and Michelle Parker, 3 weeks after the accident. David never met them face to face, but he saw them on the news, holding their daughter, thanking God and the police and everyone who'd helped bring her home. Sarah watched the news coverage from her hospital bed. She'd been transferred to the psychiatric ward and wept silently. "I remember loving her," she said to David. "That part was real, wasn't it? Even if everything else was a lie, the love was real." David didn't know how to answer that. 2 months later, Sarah was released to a specialized treatment facility. David drove her there himself. The car ride silent, except for the radio playing softly between them. "I don't expect you to wait for me," Sarah said as they pulled into the facility's parking lot. "I don't expect you to forgive me. What I did, even if I wasn't in my right mind, it's unforgivable." David stared at the steering wheel. "Do you remember our wedding vows? In sickness and in health. This is different." "Is it?" He finally looked at her. "You got sick, Sarah. Your mind got sick from grief and pain and desperation, and I didn't see it. I was so caught up in my own disappointment that I didn't see my wife falling apart. That's not your fault. And it's not yours either. Not really." David reached across and took her hand. "We both broke. We just broke in different ways." Sarah's tears fell onto their joined hands. "I don't know if I can come back from this. I don't know who I am anymore." "Then we'll figure it out together." David squeezed her hand. "One day at a time. That's all we can do." 6 months later, David received a letter at the house. It was from Michelle Parker, Emma's mother. Inside was a photograph. Emma, now 8 months old, smiling at the camera, healthy and loved. The letter was short. "Mr. Harrison, I don't know if you'll read this or throw it away. I wouldn't blame you either way, but I wanted you to know that Emma is thriving. She's happy, healthy, and very loved. I also wanted to tell you something the police and the media never mentioned. When they found Emma with your wife, she was perfectly cared for, clean, fed, held. Your wife may have taken her from us, but she kept her safe. In her own broken way, she loved our daughter. I'll never understand what she went through, the pain that drove her to such desperate action. But I'm a mother now, and I understand desperation. I understand what it means to love a child so much that it rewrites your reality. I hope your wife finds healing, and I hope you find peace. Michelle Parker." David read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and placed it in his pocket. That evening, he drove to the treatment facility where Sarah was living. She'd progressed well, the medication had stabilized her, and therapy was helping her process the trauma and rebuild her fractured sense of self. They sat together in the facility's garden, the late autumn sun casting long shadows across the grass. "I got a letter today," David said. "From Emma's mother." Sarah's breath caught. "What did it say?" "That Emma is happy, that you kept her safe, He pulled out the photograph and handed it to her. Sarah stared at the image, tears streaming down her face. She's beautiful. She is. I'm glad she's with her real parents. Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. I'm glad they have her back. But God, David, I miss her. I know I have no right to, but I miss her so much. David put his arm around her shoulders. I know. They sat in silence as the sun set. Two broken people trying to find their way back to each other, knowing the road ahead would be long and uncertain. But they were walking it together, and for now that was enough.